Monday morning. Hope you're having a great one on this September 30th. Just barreling down September. October just moments away, if you can believe it. I guess temperature-wise, you certainly can. Let's get to the panel. On the panel this morning, she is former Liberal MP Marlene Jennings. Hi, Marlene.
Hi.
And the founder and editor of Montreal Community Contact, Egbert Gaye. Hi, Egbert.
How you doing?
Doing great. Okay, guys, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, okay?
Yeah.
I hate to say it, almost feels like it's already forgotten, but Friday afternoon in this city, oh my goodness. Now, the police say it was 315,000. Organizers say it was 500,000. I'm going to split the difference. 400,000 people go downtown and make their voices heard with Greta Thunberg about the climate. So, Greta has a list of 4 things that she says everyone needs to do to fix the planet. The top 2 things are go vegan and don't fly. So do we have 400,000 Montrealers who are not flying and vegan this morning?
No.
So what's your take?
My take is that that's an ideal, but our governments can definitely move quickly and firmly and effectively on climate change so that in 10, 20, 30 years, we're actually in a great position.
Look, all respect due to Greta Thunberg. She's 16 years old. She's an inspiration to a whole lot of young women, and they're keeping the fires burning. And men, but a lot of young girls are being driven towards the climate change issue. That's not where it is. It's not an individual responsibility at this point. It's not about going vegan or not flying. Marlene is right. Government has some responsibility, but the real responsibility is on the people that produce 81% of emissions. Those are the big corporations. Those are the energy guys, the transportation people. They're the villains in this. That's where we have to look. And that's where government is important to come down heavily on regulating those big, bad people who are emitting with impunity, basically. And that's what it is. That's a bad thing.
I agree. And I think if we look at the transportation industry, for instance, we already know from science that the delivery through trucks, for instance, are amongst the largest emitters. So if government puts into place a program for the electrification of our trucks that are on the road nonstop, our taxis that spend hours on the road emitting gas, that would make a big change.
You guys have faith in the Canadian system, in Canadian politics, that regardless who wins the next election, regardless, that the voices of people have been heard, so any government would be foolish not to respond to that call?
I think that in terms of 3 parties, it has been heard. And that would be the Liberals, that would be the NDP, and that would be the Green Party. In terms of the Conservative Party, their so-called climate change plans have been graded F by every single expert, including from industry.
It focuses a lot on business, their plan, and making businesses go green as opposed to individuals and making individuals
Except that it doesn't make the businesses go green. And it's been proven that those kind of things do not work.
Corporate responsibility is a big deal. And I think, of course, you have to have stringent regulations that imposes on corporations the need to see. Number one, you have to see and believe in climate change. And for a whole lot of corporations, they're not believing, and it's up to government to do it. And like Marlene says, we have 3 political parties that are committed to climate change, to bring in real change. But once you tie in climate change, the zest and initiatives toward climate change, once you tie it in too tightly with economics and spending, sometimes the lines are blurred. And that's where Justin Trudeau is getting a lot of problems with his big pipelines and his commitment towards climate change.
And spending on all of the above. Let's talk about the Liberal Party and their promises. I think they're going to launch a new music festival called Debt Palooza. because their latest figures on the deficit say it's going to be in their first year in this new mandate would be now up to $27 billion.
Yes.
They have made an incredible amount of promises, from planting trees and previous promises, and giving everyone $2,000 to go camping. Yay! That's what we really need $2,000 for. But they made an enormous amount of these pledges and promises. Isn't there a certain point where you're like, okay, now you've lost me. I was going to vote for you, but now you've lost me because now you're promising the stars and the moon and everything.
No. And the reason
but you're just
why,
you're a staunch liberal, Marlene. What about
I'm a staunch liberal who has never hesitated to criticize my own party, and when I was an MP and we were government.
What happened to you, Marlene?
Criticize.
You used to criticize Justin Trudeau. Now you love him. You just love him.
I don't love Justin Trudeau.
not?
I love Jean Chrétien.
Yeah.
Okay.
I respect Justin Trudeau because I've seen what he has done as leader. And I've also appreciated the fact that he doesn't hesitate to acknowledge and apologize when he's clearly made big errors. Unlike
but
some
that's like,
other leaders.
This is the thing. It's like, well, you know what? He apologizes. Like, but he's
stuff.
repeatedly apologizing because he's repeatedly
Okay,
doing
listen.
stuff.
Except that it's not the same thing.
Let's talk a little bit about spending.
Yes.
Let me tell you a bit about spending. If you want some numbers, look at some numbers today. Almost 30. What's the percentage of people living in poverty? We're looking at 9 or 10% of Canadians still living in poverty.
Yes.
Those are millions.
Liberals say the numbers are down. Over
9,
the course of
and
their
they
career.
are
from
down.
10,
Right.
from 9 to 9 to, from 10 to 9 to 9.5.
They are down,
That's
but they're not
significant
enough.
number of Canadians. We have almost 700,000 kids below the age of 18 going to school hungry every day, making determinations that they can't eat or buy school books. Those are the numbers you got to look for. I remember more than 20 years ago, all three political parties, they decided we're going to eradicate poverty in Canada. You remember that?
Yes,
yeah, you
I
guys made
remember
a
it.
commitment. Well, still today we have millions and millions of Canadian
But
families.
Egbert, are you advocating that? Hey,
Yes,
the
he
bed,
should
the,
spend
the,
a
should be
little more.
$50 billion
He
in
should
deficit.
spend a little more. I'm going to tell you why. Students, they leave school with $25,000 to $27,000 in debt every year. So, and it takes them about 10 years to
clear
pay it
the
off.
debt.
Students, you leave school, you want to get married, you want to buy stuff, you want to live large. You have 20.
I just want to point one thing.
Those are the numbers.
I want to point one thing out, and that is, because I know conservatives like to focus on the deficit and the large numbers, and that there's no end in sight to deficits with the Liberal government. As a portion of GDP, it's actually not as bad as this 20 years ago. And you
it's
had
the
$27
best
billion.
in the industrialized world.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
I'm not entirely like I'm not entirely on team like, oh, all deficits are bad. I think you can have a deficit and you can still work things out for the economy. But still, I am getting concerned that there's just a never-ending.
No, you shouldn't.
Well,
Canada
no.
is good. Canada is good.
Yeah,
And
but
what
if
Justin
it's
did-
coming out of $2,000 bursaries to go camping,
It's
I
good.
do get concerned.
Listen,
It's all
people
good.
are making fun of the $2,000 bursaries. Yeah. One of the things that unites us as Canadians is knowing our country and appreciating the diversity, even just geographically, okay?
Sure.
I grew up in a family where there was no such thing as camping.
Same here.
A vacation, it was you drove, to your grandmother's place, for instance, and that was the vacation. So getting to know Canada waited until I was an adult.
Listen, I'd be in
wanna
favor
come
of that. I
back
just
to-
think to make it so niche, it's got to be it's for camping trips when you could do a whole bunch of things. Why can't you go visit grandmother Nana in Calgary as well?
I
in
agree.
a plane, right?
I agree. I would have liked to see a free trip by train anywhere in Canada once in your
You
lifetime.
heard it here first. Marlene Jennings wants free trips for all.
Yep,
Jennings 2024. The panel continues. Marlene Jennings, Egbert Gaye, and let's move on now to the leader of the Conservatives, Andrew Scheer, and something, I don't know, maybe a lot of us are guilty of, little white lie perhaps, but this one has to do with a candidate for Prime Minister of this country. And Andrew Scheer, Globe and Mail reporting on Saturday, looking at Andrew Scheer's life. And I was reading this profile, and you hear that, Andrew Scheer, started 10 years old. He was a paper boy. I was like, oh, look at that entrepreneurial Andrew Scheer going to get a paper. Then you find out, his dad worked at the paper, so that's why he was doing that. It's like, okay, maybe he didn't really think of it on his own. Whatever. Goes on, and again, you're running for the Conservatives, right? And the Conservatives is, we're for the small business person, the medium-sized business. We're for, the everyman. And you sort of have to look at, does this guy have any chops in private industry? Globe and Mail looked at it, okay? And here's where things get murky. What kind of private sector experience does Andrew Scheer actually have? So from the Globe and Mail, in 2003, he worked briefly as a waiter in Regina. Okay. A few months as a waiter in Regina. Then he spent a few months working in insurance, and this is where it gets murky. Although what he did isn't exactly clear. In official bios, such as the one on his Facebook page, Mr. Scheer said to have been an insurance broker before entering public life. And he's been in public life, by the way, as a politician since he was 25 and working on campaigns since he was 19. His office said he was an insurance agent. And then, as Globe and Mail puts it very bluntly, he was not. The Globe and Mail found no record he ever received a license required by law to work as an insurance agent or broker in Saskatchewan. Asked to clarify, Mr. Scheer's spokesperson, Daniel Shao, said earlier this week that Mr. Scheer took broker courses, but left the industry before receiving such a license. Okay? So, he's trying to prove that he's got private sector chops. He doesn't have any. Makes a little fib on his CV. Now it's been uncovered. I find the most hilarious thing. And it's sort of like just desserts here, because if you recall last week, Andrew Scheer in Papineau was speaking in Papineau. Was like, we're going to investigate when we're in power, we're going to investigate the Prime Minister's wrongdoing. So I love this, even though I think it's the stupidest thing in the world, but I love it. Liberals now calling for the Saskatchewan oversight authorities to investigate Scheer's insurance agent claim. Lock him up. But guys, so what is this really white lie resume? We all do it. Or are you like, you know what? If we're going to go over everyone's resume with a fine tooth comb, you're running for public office, you want the highest office in this land. Is it serious?
Well, it's a good way to ignore some of the important and interesting issues in the country. Certainly a good way not to think about students leaving school with $26,000 in debt. Good way to look at the number of homeless people on the streets of major cities. Good way to look at increased criminalization because of poverty. And talk about silliness about some guy lying on his resume. But that guy was brown-faced silliness? I know, it's true. I understand that, and I understand that it's pretty sad for a guy to be lying and say that he was an insurance agent. I mean, get something significant. But I think more and more Canadians are starting to see Andrew Scheer as being on the outside of some of their major interests. And I think, eventually, the fact that he was not an insurance agent or he was not an accredited insurance agent is just going to add to the list of silliness that we can tie on to him.
Andrew Scheer is a liar. It's as simple as that. No, he's a liar.
But he's a liar. But doesn't everyone do this kind of little?
Everyone is not running to be the leader of the country, to be the prime minister. Okay, that's one. However, I take and agree with the point that Egbert just said. Putting so much emphasis on this is taking away from real substantive discussions and issues that we have to deal with. He's a liar.
And the Liberals have to take blame for that, for talking about investigating him at 2 levels in Saskatchewan.
I don't have a problem with filing a complaint. No, I don't have a problem, but you turn the page. You file the complaint, and then you turn the page, and you talk about substantive things.
But can't the argument be made? So let's, I know when we talked about Trudeau and his, again, this is a guy that never found a chance to put on makeup that he didn't like. Okay, so
I'm waiting for the one with him dressed dressed up as a woman.
But here's the thing, like when it came, but when it came to that kind of stuff, right? You can say, okay, so he does the brown face, does the black face. Okay, maybe it's not about brown face, black face per se, but it's about this pattern of behavior, right? So I think that's why it actually does become a bigger campaign issue, and it's worth the focus, because you got a guy who's running for a second term in office, and he's got this pattern of behavior where do as I say, don't do as I do.
20
okay,
years ago.
of course. But in this instance, you have a guy, Andrew Scheer, running for prime minister, and you know, the conservative sort of whole mantra is like, you know, hey, we are thinking, we are the business, we're the party of business. And our guy, he knows about the private sector. And it turns out he doesn't know much about the private sector,
right? Being an insurance agent? I mean, what you do as an insurance agent is build relationships with people. Go and build relationships with family. I mean, your business acumen, you know, comes secondary to that ability to sell one or two sell claims. Look, the challenge here is,
if he was claiming to be a lawyer, you have to be accredited. And if you're not accredited, it doesn't matter if you did all of your law, you got a law degree. If you didn't do the exams and the articling or internship, as we say here in Quebec, and then actually be accredited by the Law Society or the Barreau de Quebec, you're not a lawyer. You're not allowed to call yourself a lawyer. So yeah, it is serious in that sense. My thing, though, is that we have so many issues that need poverty. How do we continue to innovate so that our business sector, our economy can continue to grow and face the challenges of greening the economy in a way that will reduce gas emissions and at the same time innovate and create jobs? And how do we retrain workers who are in the old style industry to be competent to work in the new green industries? But those are the issues that we need.
But those are the issues you guys should be talking about. When I say you guys, the Liberals.
Yes.
Those are the issues that you guys should focus on, rather than telling Canadians that this guy is a little bit of a liar in his aspirations.
I agree. I think
Liberals should be not an issue.
It really is not, but the Liberals want to change the page badly on the Justin Trudeau issue.
It's
all about changing the page.
It's not the worst thing I've heard of.
The way that we change the page is to talk about the Liberal climate change plans, which experts across the board, including in the oil and gas industry, have given better than passing grades if it's implemented. That's what I think we should be talking about.
I want to try and make sure I get to two topics here. So let's do this next one pretty quickly, okay? Again, an example of why I'm so not impressed with anyone in this election campaign. I'm not impressed with anyone. It's like a choice of nothings, okay? But conservatives are asked in the past week, like, hey, by the way, what are you going to do about the Senate if you guys get back into power? Because you've always said that you're going to return the Senate to the sort of patronage and partisan appointments. One of the things the Liberals did in the last 4 years is when they name people to the Senate, they're independent senators.
Yes.
And I know you can argue that, hey, okay, well, still they're being named by Liberals, so they're going to be cozy Liberals. But they went completely independent. They've got no allegiance in that respect. I find it so odd that the Conservatives in an election campaign are just like, so they're not like, hey, we're going to look at it. They're just overtly, we get in power. It's back to the same old cronyism to pick senators. Yes. I think that's so dumb to just go out and admit it. But I want to know if you think that the Senate would be better with partisan picks again.
No, they would not. And the reason why the Conservatives are still in favor of patronage is because right now the balance in the Senate is between the independents and the Conservatives. And if the Liberals are re-elected as government, the independent appointment, selection, and recruiting of people to be appointed senators will continue, and that means that the independents will become the overwhelming majority, which means then government will have to actually deal with the Senate. If the Conservatives get in, they're going to do patronage appointments, Conservatives. They will retake the majority, and that means that a Conservative government will be able able to push through
and
any legislation.
That's why I think it's so dumb to just admit that, because it's another thing like, oh, I don't know if I.
It goes against the will of the people.
Yes,
the
it
will
does.
of Canadians.
The Senate has never been about the will of the people.
No,
right?
but the will of the people is that we have some independence in the
Yes.
Senate. That's why the government, that's why the Liberals are doing it.
Yep.
They recognize the will of Canadians to have independence there. And so if we're going to talk about sober second thought, which is the cliche definition of the Senate, then we have to have an independent body that's going to be looking at legislation that way.
Let's get to this topic. We've got a story from over the weekend in Repentigny of a 42-year-old man. His 8-year-old son and 2 of the 8-year-old son's friends are playing out in the yard. He's a black man, by the way. He's 42 years old. He's a black man.
I thought so.
And his son is like, "Hey, can you take us to the park? I want to play in the park." So the kids were playing with toy cars. This is important because one of the toy cars broke, and one of the kids had gone back to his house and gotten a letter opener as use a tool to try and fix this toy car. They get to the park. The dad sees the letter opener. He takes it away from the kids. Like, "Hey, listen, while you play, I'm going to take the letter opener." Cops are at the park. They see this letter opener, and then this guy, he started recording. Thankfully. And you just see this video that he posted to Facebook. He's surrounded, 3 cops, completely surrounded, 2 of them pointing guns at him, one with the gun down at least, for having this letter opener in the park. I mean, and apparently the Repentigny police force, this is time and time again. Listen, you guys are here. You tell me what your thoughts, because I'm so offended, but I can't imagine as people that have to deal with this on a constant basis.
Well, it points to the disconnect between police and minorities, especially black men. And that's been going on. The only way it's going to change is when they're being held accountable in a meaningful way. Up to now, none of the oversight bodies have reacted to this disconnect and this this injustice that lingering injustice. So, as long as they're getting away with it, they're going to do it because the disconnect is going to continue.
This is what you call systemic racism. As a black woman, I have not had to face what my fellow black males have had to face from the time they were kids. I can remember back in the late 60s, there was a crime that was committed, and the alleged perpetrator was a black man in his 50s. Well, the Montreal police went out and arrested every single black man from the ages of 14 years old up to 80 years old.
So you all look alike, Marlene.
Of course.
and
this is still happening today. There is a perception that if you're a black male, you're automatically suspect, you're automatically a criminal. So anything that happens that's untoward, it's automatically major reaction, forceful reaction, armed reaction on the part of too many of our law enforcement.
One way we deal with it, we hold those police officers.
That's right.
That's the only way.
One of these cops apparently involved in another thing in 2017, right?
Oh,
Exactly.
not
So
surprising.
So if they're not being held accountable, it's going to keep happening.
That's right.
Guys, I love you too. Thank you for coming in this
Love
morning.
you too.
Egbert, Gaye, and Marlene Jennings on this morning's panel.